In this video today, I'm going to be ranking the 4 live-action Star Wars TV shows. Now, I have ranked all the films and TV shows in a live stream format. I actually ranked all the Star Wars films and TV shows over the course of 3 different streams because I went pretty in-depth. This is going to be a more condensed version of that, as this is a video, not a stream. So, with that out of the way, coming in last place in number 4 is going to be Kenobi. Now, I know that some of you might watch this video will be surprised that I'm ranking Kenobi below Book of Boba Fett, and I completely get that. I don't like either series, but the reason why I have Kenobi in last place is because there's so much wasted potential, missed opportunities with this show. This show has great moments and great sequences in it. Seeing Darth Vader in full rage mode, seeing Obi-Wan lift up a ton of rocks, seeing Vader easily beat Reva, bring a ship down, and then rip pieces of the ship off. That is awesome. I like what we saw from Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen throughout Kenobi. I like seeing the Inquisitors in live action, seeing Fortress Inquisitorius, which previously had only appeared in the video game Jedi Fallen Order. But I feel like this series had the potential to be so much better than it ended up being. This show could have been so much better if it was an introspect that actually focused on Obi-Wan Kenobi. If the focus of the series was studying Obi-Wan's character, exploring his character more in depth, the show could have been so much better. Imagine if Kenobi had really focused in on Obi-Wan dealing with his guilt over failing Anakin, his trauma over everything that went down, grief about everyone that he's lost. And then the series also could have showed us Obi-Wan training to become a Force ghost. That would have been so much more interesting. I like that we got to see Qui-Gon right at the very end of the show, but if Qui-Gon had played a bigger role in the show, if we had seen Obi-Wan training as to become a Force ghost, if this series had not been focused on several different things and instead was an introspective show that was a character study for Obi-Wan Kenobi, it could have been so much better. Because as is, the show is focused on a couple different things. It's focused in on the Inquisitors hunting down Jedi. It's focused on Leia being kidnapped and rescued by Obi-Wan, the two of them forming a friendship. It's also focused on Obi-Wan Kenobi. Therefore, the show is trying to do too many things at once, especially considering that there are only 6 episodes in this season. That's not a ton of episodes. I think that Disney shot themselves in the foot by not extending this season of Kenobi. If there had been more episodes, it could have helped out a lot. Also, I am baffled by how laughably bad the chase scene in episode 1 is. That is easily one of the worst chase scenes I've ever seen in my life. First of all, you have all these people that are trying to kidnap Leia, but for some reason, rather than immediately running after Leia to grab her, they instead wait for her to start running and then they start chasing her. It's baffling that they decide to be kind and give Leia a head start. And then somehow this little girl is able to outrun these fully grown adults. There's even a shot where Leia ducks under a tree. This guy is trying to kidnap Leia, bumps against this tree branch, and is like, Oh, how could I possibly get past this tree? This is such a huge barrier to me getting this little girl. Oh, it's not like I could possibly go underneath the tree or jump over it or go around it. No, how could I possibly get past this tree? And besides that, in general, I am baffled by the fact that the show has such absolutely lazy writing. Like, Obi-Wan being like, oh, how could I possibly get past this fence here? I couldn't possibly, go around it, which he easily could have done. No, instead, I need to shoot it for some reason. And then in episode 4, Tala's plan for escaping these stormtroopers is to open hand slap them, and then Tala and Obi-Wan's brilliant plan to get Leia off of Fortress Inquisitorius is to hide her underneath Obi-Wan's big trench coat in a hangar with Imperials absolutely everywhere, rather than, oh, I don't know, putting her in a droid or something like that. Those kind of moments made me go, "What? Am I watching a low budget cartoon uh, put out by a put out by an indie studio? I thought I was watching a live action show with a large budget being made by a company with a lot of resources like Disney." Those moments were so bad they made me laugh out loud. And then when it comes to Riva, the idea behind her character is interesting, but the series fails to address how obviously nonsensical and hypocritical her motivations are. So she's mad at Vader for killing the Jedi during Order 66 when he marched on the Jedi Temple, as we saw in Revenge of the Sith. But for some reason, Riva's plan for getting revenge on Vader for killing Jedi involves her becoming an Inquisitor and killing even more Jedi. She's basically saying, I'm going to avenge the killing of Jedi by killing more Jedi. I'm going to avenge the killing of children by killing even more children. Utterly laughable. And then Obi-Wan, for some reason, in the final episode, doesn't kill Vader. Now, obviously, from an out of universe perspective, we know Vader can't die in the Kenobi series because the series is set before A New Hope in the original trilogy. Vader appears in the original trilogy, so we know that he can't actually die here. But looking at this strictly from an in universe perspective, why would Obi-Wan decide, you know what, I'm just going to let this evil Sith Lord who has committed numerous horrific crimes and atrocities live? I'm not just going to, kill him right here and now to prevent him from taking even more innocent life in the future. Well, this means that after Kenobi, anytime Vader kills someone or commits some horrific crime or atrocity, Obi-Wan is partly to blame because he failed to kill Vader when he had the chance. Also, yeah, hmm, that'll be that'll be it for this show. So moving on now to number 3, Book of Boba Fett. This is a show that I find to be utterly baffling because I don't understand what the creators of the show were thinking. To me, this show is a baffling and bizarre misfire. First of all, I don't know why it is they thought it was a good idea to make a show where Boba Fett is the title character, but is consistently outshined throughout the entire show. Boba Fett is a title character, and yet he's repeatedly outshined in his own show, even to the point where Din Djarin comes in and just completely steals his thunder. Also, if you don't have enough plot to fill 6 episodes of a show, that's a really bad sign. That says that this show is flawed on a fundamental level. The fact that they decided to put 2 episodes of The Mandalorian in the Book of Boba Fett, even though there's only 7 episodes, not 6, it's 7 episodes in the show, I find to be so utterly baffling. I don't know what they were thinking, why they thought this was remotely a good idea, and it's such a bad sign if people are saying these 2 episodes that don't feature the title character of this show are the best episodes of the show. Also, these characters are talking about going to war, and yet that's not what we see in the final episode. It's Boba Fett and 20 of his friends going up against the Pikes. It's not a war. And what I find so comical is that when Fennec Shand kills off these Pikes, it should be a big deal, but yet in the show, you don't care at all. It's like, whatever. She killed them. Who cares? And the show moves so slowly in the first couple episodes that it's incredibly boring. And the people who made the show set up a better finale that they didn't end up doing. Boba Fett is talking about how he needs an army. He had an army with the Tuskens. If you have the Tuskens come in as the cavalry in the final episode, that obviously would have been so much better and would have made it so that those flashbacks actually do matter for this story, for this show, and actually do have relevance. But as is, you're left wondering, why are these flashbacks included? What's the point? The Tuskens all die off anyway, and they don't come back as the cavalry in the final episode to save the day. So why are these flashbacks here? And my god, the chase scene that happens in episode 3 is laughably bad. I don't know if it's I don't think it's as bad as the one in Kenobi, but it's bad. And I was like, what the heck am I watching? It's so slow that it's utterly laughable. And plus, you have these bikers who do not fit in Star Wars at all. The Vespa gang. I don't know what the heck the people behind the show were thinking, why they thought these Vespa gang members fit on Tatooine. Tatooine is a desert planet where sand is blowing all the time. There's barely any water. And yet what we see in this show is that these Vespa people have these brightly colored bikes that does not fit with the location of Tatooine at all. It doesn't fit when you're on a desert planet. It would make sense if you're on a planet that has more water, like a forest planet or a planet with big bodies of water, but it doesn't make sense on Tatooine. So you're left wondering, what? Why are these bikes brightly colored and why are we not seeing sand on them? What do these guys constantly wash off their bikes so they look shiny? What? And I don't get why it is that the people who made this show thought it was remotely a good idea to hold off on bringing Cad Bane in until episode 6 out of 7. If you just have Cad Bane show up earlier, if you make him the obvious bad guy of the show, if you really explore the history that exists between Cad Bane and Boba Fett, that would have obviously been so much better. And you know what else would obviously have been better? Have Boba Fett be the character that the fans wanted him to be. So there are things I enjoy about this show, but overall, I find this show to just be a big misfire and one that really baffles me. So now moving on to number 2, we have, let's see, we have the Mandalorian, a show that I really enjoy. I like the fact that it's set in that it's set after the original trilogy but before the sequels. That's a point in time that isn't explored all too much. The character arc that Din Djarin or the Mandalorian goes on is very well done. The show has great characters, it has great action scenes, great visuals. I love the fact that it brings in characters like Bo-Katan, Cobb Vanth, Boba Fett, Ahsoka, Luke Skywalker, and it makes complete sense. It doesn't feel like just unnecessary fan service. No, it makes sense within the context of the show. It makes sense for this story. The scene where Luke takes down all those Dark Troopers is utterly incredible. Grogu is a great addition. Aside from the fact that he's just super cute, he's become a meme, and there's a whole ton of merchandise for him. The relationship that forms between Grogu and Din Djarin is very well done. But I will say the second season is more, I don't think it's as good as the first season. The reason for that is because several episodes in season 2 use the same basic setup. That setup being, I'll scratch your back if you scratch my back. Din Djarin wants a favor from somebody, and they say, we'll do this for you if you do this for us. We'll do you a favor if you do us a favor. The episodes, therefore, do get a bit repetitive because they tend to be pretty simplistic, use the same basic setup. Also, like how Kenobi has a one episode 4 that just comes off like pure filler. This series suffers from the problem of having a couple of filler episodes, like the second episode of season 2, chapter 10, The Passenger, or the fifth episode of season 1, chapter 5, The Gunslinger. Those are episodes that to me just come off as completely unnecessary, complete filler. So the combination of a couple of filler episodes and the more basic setup that's a good amount of the episodes in season 2 use is ultimately why I'm placing Andor at number 1 rather than The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian was a pleasant surprise. It was a breath of fresh air after the sequel trilogy. It's like, wow, this is actually a really good show. But I think Andor is just on another level. This is not a show I was even excited about before it came out. I wasn't hyped for this show, both because it's set in a very overly explored time period and also because I didn't care about Cassian Andor. He's fine in Rogue One, but I didn't think he deserved to get his own show. I didn't think he was interesting enough to actually be the lead of a TV show. But man, this show ended up being so much better than I was expecting. It's definitely not for everyone because there's not a huge amount of familiar Star Wars elements in this show. It's more serious, it's more dark, it doesn't have as much humor as other Star Wars shows. It's definitely a slower paced show that I would say is a slow burn, but I think that very much works. I like the structure that Andor uses, where you have, for the most part, these free episode mini arcs that play out like a mini movie. The first episode sets everything up, the second one ratchets up the tension, the third episode pays it all off. The characters in the show are really well done. I love exploring Mon Mothma more because she's an important character from a lore perspective, but she's never had a huge amount of screen time. Characters like Luthen Rael and Kino are fantastic. The arc that Kino goes on throughout the prison arc is fantastic. I find it so powerful that in the finale of that arc, he fights incredibly hard to make sure everyone else will be able to escape from this prison without an expectation that he was going to make it out. It's obvious that he has decided that I am going to fight for everyone else, regardless of what happens to me, regardless of whether I end up being able to escape or not. He certainly knew that by announcing himself as the leader of the group, and since he didn't know whether he was going to escape or not, he might end up being tortured, but yet Kino still chooses to not only announce himself as the leader of this group that's helping to free everyone from this prison, but he also chooses to fight to ensure everyone else can be free. It's so powerful to see Kino being very selfless. It's also incredibly powerful and sad that he fights so hard so everyone else can be free, but he's ultimately unable to enjoy the freedom that he fought so hard for. The speech Lufin Rael gives in, I think it's episode 10, very, very powerful. Because in that speech, Lufin Rael says, I have accepted that I am cursed because of what I do. I have accepted that I have damned myself because of what I do. I've accepted that I will not ever know happiness. I know that I might not be around to see the results of my actions. I might not be around to see the end result of what I'm fighting for right now, but I am still going to carry on anyway. Stellan Skarsgård and Andy Serkis give incredible performances. Basically, all the other actors give good performances as well. This show is really something different. For me, it's the most well written Star Wars show. There are definitely other Star Wars shows that are more exciting, more fun to watch, that have more familiar Star Wars elements, but I think this is the most mature, most sophisticated, and most well written Star Wars show that is currently out there. So, with that in mind, that'll wrap up this ranking for today.